Richard, Titus, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, welcome to this very special edition, actually, of the Outside In podcast. This may be, I don't know, maybe the first episode of many more to come, or the last episode of the Outside In podcast with me in it, at least. Very nice to have you on the show today, and I think we always get to see acquisition stories in the news and how they go, and it's always horror stories, etc. So I thought, now that we can actually put the news out there into the world that Funky has been acquired by the two of you and the people behind you, but by your group that you're setting up. I thought it would be nice to share, how that story went, also your background, so that the people that have been following the journey of Funky over these years also get to see the faces of these new people. So if you look briefly into the camera, then people can see your faces. And so I thought it would be a nice way to get the audience to meet you. So before we dive into the details, maybe tell the audience a little bit about yourself. Richard, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. Yes. Well, thanks, Alex. First of all, having us on the show. A little bit about myself. I'm an investor entrepreneur. Started my first company just after my MBA studies, and that was a digital media company. Actually, we did that for 5-6 years, and then we were able to sell the company to a Swedish listed company in actually also starting in the Netherlands, and we were their Dutch subsidiary. After that, we started a consultancy firm. Also did that for a couple of years, and then I sold my shares and went into the computer gaming industry, which I did for quite some time now. I think for over 15 years. I'm still very much involved in Utomic, a company in Eindhoven, which is a subscription gaming platform, now having deals with large companies like LG and Samsung, etc. Yeah. About a year ago, just to dive into the deep, I was thinking about my next venture or my next step. I've done a lot of things besides the examples I gave you. I was involved in lots of other companies as an investor or sometimes also operational. But I didn't want to do startups anymore.
It's too much work.
I think pretty much the opposite of what you're doing, apparently. I wanted because I know how it is. I know how it is to start up a company. I know the roller coaster you have to go through. I know how difficult it is to get from a good idea, with a beer, coming up with a good idea, all the way up to get it funded, get it out there, and get it successful, and then in the end, hopefully, to sell the company. So I decided to work on companies that already has a proven record, track record, has some nice brand in the market, and also have a history of good revenues and profits, and a good team, hopefully with a very nice culture. Yeah, and that's what we did. So we set up. I met Titus in the process, and we worked out a plan to start acquiring companies, put them all together in a group, and use our experience and to accelerate their success, and by putting them in a group, have all these synergies which you can have if you start working together. Roughly. So there's a lot more to say, but.
I think that summarizes it quite well. And I'm going to also briefly now go to Titus. You're not new to the city of Rotterdam.
No. I love the city of Rotterdam. Being born and raised in the area, a city nearby called Vlaardingen. And I'm an agency guy. I started off as a trainee back in the 80s. Those were the 80s. As a trainee with a media agency in Rotterdam. And fast forward, I've worked with various agencies and started my own media agency here in Rotterdam called Stroom. And which means stream, by the way. And I sold that company after 15 years.
Oh, just like me,
to an Amsterdam group.
Yeah.
Called Candid.
Yeah.
I left Stroom in 2019. And afterwards, I've been investing into different social enterprises. And I'm working as an interim consultant, business coach, helping out companies. And so that was quite a good fit when we met at an incubator event in Utrecht. And we went out to lunch because we live in the same lovely village of Zeist near Utrecht. And after having a good lunch, we decided that we are a very good fit. I guess Richard much more from an investment perspective, looking at companies from an investor's perspective, and I'm looking at companies much more from strategic perspective.
Yeah.
And that's the two roles we have in the holding of in this moment.
Yeah. Yeah, and so you both are experienced entrepreneurs. I think that's also when I got the call as an entrepreneur, you're never really actively like, oh, I really want to sell my company, like unless it's not going well. But it wasn't the case for me. And so when I got the call from you, Richard, I had to get used to the idea. Selling your company is definitely a big milestone in a life. But you've both stood also on the other side of the table, so yes. About being acquired. And I think there's always a lot of mystery around, how does a company get sold, and how does that work internally? And internal communication plays a really huge role. And I think now that I've experienced it in my own skin, I can see why. But I would like to hear maybe also from both of you, maybe not going into details you can't disclose, but the ones that you can. How was the process for you, and what did you see going well with internal communication, and what did you thought could have been improved on your own journeys, so when you were being acquired? So maybe, Richard, I'm going to start with you, and then I'm...
Yeah. So the process is... the steps you take always is letter of intent or anything alike. Could be terms, a term sheet or whatever. And then you have, there's exclusivity period. So that means we really start communicating exclusively with each other for usually like 2, 3, 4 months. Mm-hmm. And in that period, there's deep dive into all the information about the company. Mm. That's a difficult part. I mean, you experience it yourselves, but there's loads and loads of questions you as an investor you need to know to make a proper decision. But also it's also very much about risks. So are there any potential risk in the company? Because you don't know anything. You have very nice conversation until then, but what is exactly under the hood? And after this period, when you have that information, you work towards the closing contract, and in the end the notary. Now, from a communication perspective, this is very interesting. If you look at internal communication, because there's always the questions: what is exactly the timing that you start telling your own team?
Yeah.
I've seen both. So I've seen in situations where they don't tell anything until the deal's signed, sealed and signed with the notary, and then it is being told to the team. In my personal case, the first time we sold the company, what we did actually from the letter of intent, we told everybody. In that particular case, it was easy because there was a lot of advantages of the deal. We became part of a large international company, meaning they could start working in Barcelona, in Stockholm, and all these other very nice, creative environments. So most of the people liked that very much. The brand was great. So it was a cool brand, so everybody could relate to that. So we told everybody from day one, and we had a clear communication. In other in other situations I've seen, you have to tell it. That's my personal opinion. Before you sign the deal, you cannot come up at a certain day, in the office and tell everybody, "Hey, listen, I was busy the last couple of weeks, but now here's the deal. We sold the company." So you have to prepare that much better. I think. Let's say, but I leave that more up to you. But I think in our situation we did it really well. So there was first the management was involved, and then later the rest of the team.
Yeah.
And there was also a high level of security that we were going to sign the deal.
Yeah.
And that's also a quite an interesting balance. But let's say the moral of the story is you always have to involve the team, because otherwise you're gonna have a real challenge after you sell. It's a scary situation for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Internal, they don't know what it's completely new. It's change. And I don't have to explain you about change management. Change means usually people there's a resistance. So you never know what comes up. I think openness and transparency is always the.
Yeah. I can tell, maybe because you were referring specifically also to how it went with us. I want to be open with it as well. So for me, it was really tricky, because as an entrepreneur, from my perspective, it's hard to balance, like, okay, when is it sure enough that this will happen? Because the consideration you're making as an entrepreneur is like, okay, if I share it now, and then eventually the entire due diligence process becomes one big roller coaster, where we have to go back to the drawing table, and which is what happens during the due diligence process. Then sharing that with the entire team can bring a lot of insecurity, even maybe more than the idea of there being like an acquiring company. And also, I personally found it really difficult to separate emotion and ratio, right? So being acquired normally is facilitated also by companies like M&A consultants that are there strictly unemotionally looking at numbers. Mm-hmm. And at the other table, there's M&A people from the other side, the buying company, that also just are strictly unemotionally looking at numbers. And what I liked from this process that we experienced is that we were all entrepreneurs. We didn't have like intermediaries in between, and which made the discussion sometimes really harsh or difficult. But at the same time, I felt that when we got through it, it created a better foundation for the future. And I think that's a bit of a risk with these M&A firms that always kind of get in between. Yes, on the one hand, they get better price or better sell price, let's say. However, it can also ruin a lot of things, I think, from the emotional side along the way. But Titus, maybe I'm curious to hear your experience with that. Yeah.
First, coming back to your issue of internal communications, we had the same issues. When are we going to tell
everyone? Yeah.
Everyone. We first started off telling our accountant team because, looking at the due diligence, we needed information from her. Then we involved the management team, but we were sure that we were going to sell the company on our terms a weekend before signing.
Wow, yeah.
So there was a lot of stress involved. Also because there were a lot of M&A advisors, accountants, tax advisors involved in the whole deal.
Yeah.
So we decided to tell the rest of our employees the day after signing
it happened.
The contract.
From
the same things you said, well, you can cause a lot of uncertainty when the deal's off. After you've been informing the employees that you're going to sell your company.
And what was
especially because we as a Rotterdam agency were selling our company to an Amsterdam-based agency. That's the next. Well,
it's a cultural thing.
It's
as well.
a very cultural thing. Yeah. So we were,
What was the impact of that on the people in the months afterwards? Was that, because I can imagine that's not an easy. It's a big surprise and it's hard to manage. So did that have a big impact?
Of course, it has an impact. Although a lot of people were not telling you about that, but
Yeah.
you could feel it in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
That there was uncertainty. Luckily, we had our 15 years trip to Naples with the whole company, and the new owners went with us.
Okay.
On that trip. So that was a very good moment for them also to build some trust.
Yeah.
With our company. If that did not had taken place, I think it would be much harder to eventually take away that uncertainty.
Yeah. I think one of the nice moments when in this process also with you guys is that at some point, Richard, you were also saying like, yeah, maybe it's good to inform people now, like before you sign. On the one hand, of course, people cannot expect that they can put me off the track of the deal. However, having the idea that they can still give me their opinion before I finally sign can be a psychological kind of moment of safety, right? Feeling more safe in having at least the influence to bring to the founder. And I had a really nice conversation once I told the management team. And one of maybe the most important questions that we asked them was, how would you like to inform the rest of the team? Because at first we were thinking, yeah, okay, we should maybe just do the announcement together during a presentation, which, by the way, is still happening today. Yeah. But we sat down and the management team said, no, we want to have individual sessions with everyone in the company, one-on-one between the manager and the employee. So, because I thought, okay, should I do that as a founder? But then again, I've been in this company for a long time. I haven't hired everyone anymore myself. So, and that was really good. So, because they managed to really zoom in on the individual questions and needs. And besides, let's be real, we are a relatively small company. But they managed to really zoom in on the needs of each individual that was there. And that at least helped to take a little bit of the pressure off. So, I think that was really good advice from you to say, okay, do it before the closing of the deal, even though that's maybe not the safest for you because maybe everyone changes my mind. But I think that helped to do that early.
Yeah. And it also helped that you already have a good management team in place.
Yeah, because technically, the way we have set up our collaboration is that I'm staying on as brand ambassador. However, what I've seen, and that was for me one of the reasons I don't want to stay as part of the company, let's say as an employee, is that I've seen too many of my entrepreneur friends kind of end up in a company, and this is generally in bigger acquisitions, where they have to remain as part of as an employee for 3 years to get their earn out, and I think that is demotivating, not just for the employee, for the entrepreneur, but also for the other employees.
Yeah, and it's good that you mention it because that's exactly my experience. I mean, the first company I sold, I had to stay on for 3 years.
Yeah,
but it's not your company anymore. And it took me a few months to really realize, because in the beginning you think, oh, it's still the same people, same faces, nothing changed. But then all kinds of decisions are taken over your head, and then you realize that you're not in control anymore. And that's maybe the most important thing that an entrepreneur drives, is that you're fully in control. You're the builders, your ideas. You can, this is your team. You're the let's say the inventor or the architect, I would say, of doing things, and that completely changes after you sell the company.
Yeah,
and that's also why we really think that a founder should not stay longer than a year, maybe.
I think we've been talking a lot about the acquisition process, and. For me, I think that the hardest pill to swallow was the due diligence. It's just, I think you told me before, you said, Alex, this is going to be really tough. Because in Dutch, you have a saying called spijkers op laag water zoeken, meaning you're just looking for things that happened in the past that are maybe painful or annoying, and you're just going to look for, is there a lawsuit? What happened in that lawsuit? Did a lawyer ever get involved? And generally, those are not nice things to talk about. What would you say helped keep also the conversation sane between us, in this process?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I mean, we did, I could say, the light version with you. And I mean, I tell you my experience. Like we had, when we sold the first company, we had the Brow Blackstone coming into the office for a week.
Yeah,
like 3 people, and they had financial, legal people coming in. So all kinds of different consultants. That's a different league. Then they really go deep. Then everything is being a potential risk. And I can tell you some more interesting stories about that, but I would do this on this podcast. But and in case, what we did is we tried to focus on the most important parts. And some things we were. I mean, if something is not known, is unknown, it's a risk anyhow, because you don't know it. So what is there? The only thing you want to know, even when it's no risk, you just want to know the information. So if let's say there is no lawsuit, then that box is ticked, right? But as long as you don't know, it may be a bit like Schrödinger's cat. There could still be a huge lawsuit, or there could be nothing. You don't know. So it's all about just clarify these things and ticking the boxes. And there are a lot of boxes. So I agree. We had to tick a lot of boxes. And then what happens is, even especially with smaller companies, that the information is very shattered within the company, within old email boxes, within different people. So not everything is well documented as maybe larger companies. Although larger companies have
a lot of departments.
Yeah,
disperse information.
So I think it's even more complex.
Yeah.
But you need, especially when you do share purchase, because so if you take the entire company, then you really want to know what was the background of the company, and it goes back like, what is it, 14 years?
Yeah.
Right. So there's 14 years of potential things that can come up in the future.
Yeah.
If it's in asset purchase, you just take over the portfolio, the people, and all the stuff in the company. Then it's easy. That's a really easy one. Then this thing is done in a day.
So you were lucky, Alex, that we did a light version of
so
the due diligence.
Lucky, yeah.
Yeah, and in this case, there was a lot of information also with you, so you had to do a lot of work yourself. Yeah.
What is it that first attracted you? And maybe let's move a little bit more then towards the market, and where, and maybe I should also look a little bit more at Titus also here. What is it that attracted you to the industry of internal communications?
Well, when we started, we had a very broad orientation to the whole communication market, looking at the external communication market, digital market, internal communication market. And what surprised me, or what I was aware of that much, was that if you look at the external communication market, there's a lot of consolidation going on. A lot of companies buying each other, but if you look at the internal communication market, it's very dispersed. There are a lot of companies acting on their own, while the real developments, if you look at the current situation, is that internal communication is getting much more interesting, we think, than it was over a few years ago. Yeah. It's moving much more from a tactical level, sending out the newsletter, organizing an employee event, being the spokesman of the management. Internal communication is much more moving up to a strategical level.
Yeah.
And that makes it interesting when a discipline becomes strategic, it becomes important, and there are opportunities to capitalize on that.
Yeah.
So, and looking at the position of Funky, that somehow opened our eyes, saying, well, this is an interesting company. Not a lot of competition, good organized team, interesting proposition, combining on one hand the strategical side, the consultancy side, and on the other hand the creative side. well, you have a lot of companies who are only operating on the consultancy side, not having the creative side on board. So I said, well, this is a nice opportunity to build a position much more on the internal communication side than looking solely at external communication.
Yeah. I have to say, like, there was a really hard choice, pivoting a company from just doing. So we started as an animation company, as most of the people watching this podcast will probably know. So and transforming an agency from being focused and specialized on one thing to a completely different one is a really difficult process. So also from a change management perspective, you really have to convince and take your employees along the same way you would your clients. And I think there's so much change in the world right now that is forced by technology to a certain degree, that is an issue that more and more also of our customers are dealing with. Like, how do you pivot a company successfully in a relatively short amount of time? Especially once, and we're still a relatively small company, but we already had a lot of difficulties pivoting away from just doing productions to, transforming your entire business to a new service. So where do you see also the future maybe of internal communications? Where do you see the biggest added values in the current landscape of technology? Maybe I'm looking at technology, I'm looking at Richard.
Yeah. Well, the first thing that pops into my mind is I think AI is going to change the world really, really rapidly. I'm as you know, I'm a big innovation guy, so I love all the newest of the new. I've been playing around with AI now for I think a year and a half, maybe two even. GPT and now ChatGPT. Now it's gone mainstream, so everybody's talking about it.
Yeah.
But the speed of acceleration is, I think, beyond imagination what we're gonna face the next 5 years. So my personal challenge is always I'm too far ahead of the curve with these things. In this case, I think I'm wrong. I think it's going much faster than everybody will expect. So I think that's something we really have to keep an eye on. Also with internal communication. Especially with internal communication. I've seen examples of very nice and interesting AI solutions for internal communication.
Can you give an example?
One is personal AI-generated messages. So an avatar could even have my face or your face or anybody else's face, even have your voice. And that sounds like difficult, but no, it can be done by me, right? I'm really not a tech nerd, with all due respect, because I love tech nerds. But I'm not. But I can do this. I have apps where I can just make my own avatar, I can have my own face, and then build scripts that is sending like maybe 10, 20, 100, 1,000 people a personal message, movie with their own name in it, and giving them a personal message. I think that's stunning.
Can you imagine what that's? But for instance, take the onboarding process when you enter a company. There's a lot of uncertainty. Where can I find stuff? What do I exactly need to do? Who I'm going to report to, etc., etc., etc. And it's a lot of procedures you have to learn. Imagine what AI can mean in that perspective. You can ask them anything about the company, about colleagues, about working processes, culture things. And you don't have to bother other colleagues in giving you presentations and guiding you through the process. This is maybe a small thing, but it can have a huge impact on, for instance, human resource can be managed in the future.
And content creation. Like, so many of besides all the imagery, the images that you can make. If you play with that, it's already stunning. But I give you one example. We were working on a press release AI created the press release like this. Snap. I just put in this is the information like bullet points.
Yeah.
And it generates a very nice press release.
Yeah.
Even better than I could do. And that was 5 minutes work.
Yeah.
Thank you, ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And I see already ChatGPT is on my desktop. The servers were out of the air last, I think, a week ago.
Last weekend.
And I was completely like, oh, already.
What do I do now?
Yeah. So you get dependent on it very quickly.
Yeah.
So that's my personal experience, and I'm really excited to see all these things happening.
So now looking into the future, you guys have taken over the company. Where do you see, the strength of Funky, just being, I think, relatively process-driven company for something that is so creative, together with all the opportunities for the future. So our mission has always been making internal communication as good as external. Mm-hmm. Where are we going to be 5 years from now?
Well, the best in the world, Alex. Where we're going to be in 5 years, that's a good question. But I'm not going to give you a concrete answer because that's the way we approach companies. To say we're not coming in with a blueprint, saying, well, this is where you're going to be in 5 years' time and you're going to do exactly what we want you to do. Yeah. First step for us is after presenting to the team this afternoon is have a meeting with the management team talking about the strategy they have in place for the coming 3 years. Yeah. And of course, we're going to challenge that strategy, but our role is to help them, coach them in achieving those objectives for the coming 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and so on. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm not going to give you a concrete outlook for the coming 5 years. It's up to the team. It's up to Funky. It's up to their ambitions, the ambitions of the team, and the challenges they face. And our role is to help them accelerate their ambition, challenge them. That is what we want to be in the long term as an investment partner. Yeah,
and maybe it's good to know that in this case there is a plan in place. As we'd love to see in what it is exactly, but we have a 100-day transition process where we take the company through a full strategic process. So that means after that, we know exactly, okay, mission, vision, targets, goals for the next 3 to 5 years are like crystal clear for everybody. What we're going to focus on, the target market, but even what we're not going to focus on. So what do we leave for the competition? But what will be our sweet spots or our white spaces? And then that translates into a rolling forecasting, which will be changed every 3 months.
Yeah, I it's funny because when you first approached me, this was actually what struck me. Like, I thought, okay, you don't have a clear vision or plan for the company you want to acquire. Then what are you doing? It sounded too vague, right? Mm-hmm. But the more I met you and the more I spoke with you, I actually got to appreciate this way of working, because that actually gives the team, that has been working for so many years on building, writing a book, transforming from animations to building an internal communication agency, that has put already so much love and energy into something, gives that the possibility and opportunity to accelerate, right? And that was for me the biggest reason that I really believe in this acquisition, that I think it can really work, because of this open mindset. So I hope maybe many people watching here today are going to learn or are going to take away like the success formula that this could become.
I had an interesting conversation the other day with another entrepreneur. He called me up. I had 90 people in the company, and he said he liked my story, and he said, the thing is, we'd love to create beautiful stuff. We'd like to, build this and build that and be creative, etc. So, but we don't like to play company. To play company, I mean,
90 employees.
Yeah, so 90 employees. So we already built a company.
90.
90.
Yeah.
And that's I thought that was a perfect match, because that's exactly what we bring to the table. Now, it's just getting the most, I think, most important things. We discussed about that before. The most important things in place, like get your financing, but all your whole finance operation, get it in place. Your HR. All kinds of other admin tools.
I think I can very much agree with that entrepreneur.
Yeah. And I know, and I mean, I've been there. I know that is not the nicest, the most enjoyable stuff to do.
Yeah.
But it's a precondition for any success.
Yeah. Good. So I think, what time do we have? Yeah. We've covered a lot. We've covered your background, so hopefully the people at home feel a little bit reassured that this company is being taken over by, I think, two very serious people with a lot of experience from two fields that I think are both really going to be relevant in the future of internal communications: technology and an agency background and an understanding of how external communications works, so that we can really achieve the best internal communication. So for me, that was really important. We've looked also at the process of how do you take over a company? What can go wrong? When do you communicate? When is the right time? We've also looked at your visions of the future, and especially also your visions of the future for Funky. Is there any last thing that you would like to add to share with the listeners at home?
Maybe for entrepreneurs, I think my best advice would be try to build your company for an exit, with an exit in mind. So whatever you do, you're doing right now, stop doing it. Think about how to create a company and prepare it for an exit, because I think that is where the success is in the end.
Yeah. And you, Titus?
Specifically, be proud and tell it. A lot of entrepreneurs, people are very involved in building their company, but they're forgetting they're building it not for themselves, but they're building it for the market. So if you have great stuff in mind, tell it.
Yeah. Yeah, then don't be too humble. Yeah,
don't be too humble, but I don't consider you a very humble person, Alex. But don't be too
Mr.
humble.
Awesome is my company name now. So, guys, thank you so much for being on the podcast. And I guess the company and the people at home are going to be seeing a lot more of you and a lot less of me. That's it.
Thank you, Alex.
Okay, thank you very much.
With selling the company.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.